Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I will break down the quarterback position for Week 4 of the NFL. Before we get started, I just want to give you a reminder. This is the week that we begin the bye weeks. Week 4, there are two teams on bye, San Francisco and the New York Jets. Philadelphia visits Green Bay on Thursday night. Dallas goes to New Orleans on Sunday night. Cincinnati visits Pittsburgh on Monday night. Those are the games that won't be on the main slate. And I build my lineups primarily for the main slate because that's where the biggest group of games are. We now have a 3-week example. And as I mentioned in my recap video, the scoring is starting to catch up with the projections, which wasn't the case in the first couple of weeks. The first thing that I like to do each week before I look at any players is look at the game totals and the point spreads. And lo and behold, when you look at the totals this week, the very first team, most people would probably be able to guess, Kansas City. Kansas City at Detroit has the highest total, 54-point game total. Kansas City favored by 6.5 points. Tampa Bay at the Rams, 50.5 points. Rams are a 9.5 point favorite. Seattle at Arizona, 47.5 point total. Seattle's a 4-point road favorite. Cleveland visits Baltimore. Game total's 46.5 points. Baltimore is a 5.5 point favorite. Carolina goes to Houston, 46.5 point favorite. Houston's a 4-point home favorite. Washington goes to the Giants, another 46.5 point total. The Giants are a 3-point home favorite. And as I've mentioned previously, obviously these aren't the only games that I will consider, but this is how I like to begin each week. I identify the high scoring games because I feel like if these games are projected to be high scoring, they're going to have the players needed to do the scoring. Now, the quarterbacks from those high scoring games are the following: Mahomes, Stafford, Winston, Goff, Wilson, Murray, Mayfield, Jackson, Allen, Watson, Keenum, and Daniel Jones from the Giants. This is definitely a strong group to begin with, and obviously I'll have to narrow it down. Looking at the other games with lower totals, I'm also intrigued with Brissett from the Colts and Rivers from the Chargers. And also, you can never leave out Tom Brady for the Patriots. Brady was limited in practice today, by the way, but that is a New England habit, week in and week out. Players, virtually, it seems like all their players are questionable until game time. And Brady's a lot older, so he gets what's called maintenance days through the week. Now let's take a deeper look at what the numbers are going to tell us this week. Through 3 weeks, these teams that I'm going to mention are ranked worst against the quarterback position. Miami is ranked number 31. They're giving up 30.6 points per game to the quarterback. This week they face Phillip Rivers. Now, this game doesn't have a high total, but this is a case that I was just mentioning that I don't just limit it to the high totals. That's just a place to start. But obviously, this is something to consider. Arizona, they're number 30. They're giving up 30.3 points per game to the quarterback. This week, they face Russell Wilson. The Giants are number 29. They give it 29.4 points per game. This week, they're facing Keenum from Washington. The number 28 team is Washington, and they're giving up 25.7 points per game. This week, they're going to face the new upstart Daniel Jones, who had a phenomenal week in his rookie debut. Houston, number 27, they're giving up 24.7 points per game. And this week, Houston is facing Carolina, so they'll be facing Kyle Allen, who is in his second start. Number 25 is Indianapolis. They're giving up 22.6 points per game to the quarterback position. This week they're facing Carr from Oakland. And number 23, Tampa Bay, they're giving up 22 points per game. This week they visit the Rams, and they're going to face Golf. There's a couple big names missing in that group. Obviously, Mahomes, they're facing Detroit. Detroit has the number 15th ranked defense as far as giving up points to the quarterback position. They're giving up 19.7 points per game. Jackson from Baltimore at home versus Cleveland. Cleveland's number 10 versus the quarterback. They're giving up 16.4 points per game. And Brady is facing Buffalo in Buffalo. Buffalo is the number 5 ranked defense against the quarterback. They're only giving up 14.4 points per game. And a lot of those, you have to look at the schedule as well when you factor in these types of numbers, because obviously Mahomes is always in play. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. This week, he's actually visiting Detroit, which is indoor. I was actually listening to a program earlier today, and they were talking about the lack of experience for Mahomes indoors that could hinder his performance. I don't think that would hinder him. Not having any weather factors and being on a fast track, artificial turf indoors, I think that actually benefits Patrick Mahomes. We'll see. No matter, as I said, it doesn't matter the opponent with Mahomes, and he's obviously the most expensive quarterback. But finding value to balance your lineup is the key and a way to differentiate yourself when playing fantasy football. Now I want to take a look at some of the top scoring quarterbacks through week 3. That was the defenses that give up the most points. Now I'm going to look at the top scoring quarterbacks and see if any of them correlate. Obviously, number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. He's scoring 32.3 points per game. Jackson from Baltimore, he's scoring 30.6 points per game. Wilson, Seattle, he's scoring 29.7 points per game. Brady scoring 25.5 points per game. And Kyle Allen from Carolina, 25.3 points per game. Remember, this is just a one-game example, though. So we don't really have a large example with him, but he is coming in at number 5. And I actually have Ryan at number 5 since Allen only has the one-game example. Matt Ryan is averaging 25 points per game. Atlanta's at home facing Tennessee. And Deshaun Watson, number 6, so he's scoring 24.8 points per game, and they're at home facing Carolina. Comparing this to defenses, these that are giving up the most points, there were 2 that correlated right off the bat. Russell Wilson, who's the number 3 scoring quarterback with 29.7 points per game. He's facing the number 30 ranked Arizona Cardinals, who are giving up 30.3 points per game. And if you average that out, that comes out to 30 points per game. So Russell Wilson is definitely on the target this week for the player pool. And the other one is Kyle Allen. And again, I want to emphasize, we only have a one-game example with Kyle Allen. He's averaging 25.3 points per game in one game. And he's facing Houston, who's ranked number 27. They're giving up 24.7 points per game, which is averages out to 25 points per game expected. A one-game example, again, does concern me for Allen as well as Daniel Jones. I would say that Jones probably has the benefit of he has the added ability to add the running game to his overall game. So if I had to choose between Allen and Jones right now, I would probably lean towards Jones just because he does add the running to his repertoire. There are also with Jones, with him running, is you have to factor in that Saquon Barkley is missing. So who do they have to run the ball? Case Keenum is going to be coming to town. They are ranked fairly high as far as passing. And if they're throwing the ball around and they do any scoring, then you have Jones, who's either going to throw the ball or run the ball. So that's another reason that I like Jones over Kyle Allen. Those are just a few things that I consider. A couple of the first statistics that I look at when I'm weeding out my quarterbacks. Here are a few other statistics that I look at, and I'm looking for the names that I've already identified to see if they show up in more areas than one. The top completion percentage for quarterbacks on the main slate are as follows. Carr, number one, 73.5% completion percentage. Ryan, 72.4%. Then you have Mahomes at 71.9%. Brissett with 71.7%. And Russell Wilson at 71.4%. I have stars by Mahomes and Wilson, obviously, because they were in the top scoring in their matchups. Some other interesting numbers to consider. The top average depth of target. How far down the field are they throwing the ball to the receivers? Number one, and he wasn't on any of the other list, is Fitzpatrick from Miami with 11.5 yards averaged ADOT. That's because they've been getting beat up pretty well, and they have to throw the ball down the field to catch up because they are definitely getting beat up. Winston is number two at 11.3 yards ADOT. Then you have Jackson from Baltimore with 11 yards ADOT. Josh Rosen from Miami also, so you team him up with Fitzpatrick. His is 10.9. And we got a small sample with Rosen as well. Matt Stafford, 10.5 yards. And Deshaun Watson, 10.3 yards. That just tells you that these quarterbacks are throwing the ball down the field. And those are the top ones as far as their depths of target. Now, the air yards per completion, I feel like this is important. It shows you what the average yards per completion. You can throw the ball way downfield, but if nobody catches it, it really doesn't give you a good number to go by. These are the top quarterbacks as far as their completions and the yards that are involved in the actual completion. Number one is Jameis Winston at 9.2 yards. Two is Stafford at 8.1. So we have Stafford in top ADOT as well as top air yards per completion. Fitzpatrick at 8.0. Jackson for Baltimore at 8 yards per completion. And Watson with 8 yards per completion. Now, the quarterbacks who have the most pass attempts, and this gives you an idea of the offense as well. Number one is game script. If these teams are behind a lot, they're obviously probably going to be throwing the ball a lot. And overall offensive strategy for teams. Number one, and he's been number one the last couple of weeks, is Murray. He's thrown 137 passes through 3 games. Number two is Keenum for Washington with 124. Matt Ryan with 123. Phillip Rivers with 116. And Patrick Mahomes with 114. One thing that feels really important about Mahomes as well is he's not game script dependent, meaning that they're undefeated and they have scored a lot of points, and he's still throwing the ball. He's number 5 overall, and that is their strategy. They throw the ball. Now, the teams with the most offensive plays, this correlates with the pace of game as well. Teams that are running a lot of plays obviously gives you more opportunities for plays, which gives you more opportunity for fantasy points. These numbers also correlate with the teams that have the highest offenses with the most fantasy points scored per offense, and I'll show you that here in a second. But the teams with the most offensive plays through 3 weeks are the Ravens with 223 plays, Arizona with 209, Denver with 206, New England with 205, Buffalo with 203. Now the top fantasy passing offenses are as follows. And this is how many points are they scoring per game based on their passing game fantasy points. Kansas City 156.08 points from their passing game. That's Mahomes, his receivers. If you added up his receivers, Mahomes' score, his receiver score, his tight end score to Kelsey, dumping it off to the running back, the passing offense is scoring 156 points per game, fantasy points. Number 2 is Baltimore's Jackson. He's scoring 140.45 points, their offense. New England is number 3 with 111.85. And then it drops off significantly. But number 4 is Washington. Their passing offense is generating 84.67 fantasy points per game. And number 5 is Detroit with another significant drop off with 62.98 points from their passing offense. Okay, I know I've put a lot on you, and I've probably blown all your mental circuit breakers with all those numbers. Now I'm going to try to break it down and show you how I've created the player pool using those numbers. Now, as I go through the week, I'll pay attention and do more studying, and we will revisit this on Saturday when we do our strategy show and build a few lineups. I'll obviously want to narrow this pool down some, but for now, these are the quarterbacks that I've come up with, and I'm going to give you some of the reasons why. Mahomes, I mean, really, do I need to explain? But I will explain and not have a bias just because this guy is phenomenal. The numbers definitely support Patrick Mahomes. Top scoring passing team, fantasy points expected. This week has one of the highest implied totals at 30 points, 71.9% completion percentage. He's not script dependent. They're in Detroit, indoors. The matchups on paper is a little bit tougher. Baltimore was supposed to have been tougher. The weather was supposed to be influence on the game last week, and he still put up big numbers. He wasn't the top scoring fantasy quarterback last week, but he still put up big numbers. The thing with Mahomes is, and if you look, he's 7,500. Then it drops off $600. So if you're going to get up and spend $6,600 or $6,900, you might want to just figure out a way just to go on up to Mahomes. For me, he's always in consideration. But if I can find value in leverage meaning someone who may score in comparison for less and is lesser owned. If Mahomes comes in 20% owned and I can find a quarterback that's 4% owned, that's going to score relevantly close, or I know for a fact, and we'll cover this tomorrow with wide receivers, there's a wide receiver that could potentially be 40% owned. Now, if I don't take that wide receiver and I take another receiver, and so let's say that 40% owned receiver doesn't cover value. Now I've eliminated 40% of the field because I didn't take him. That's not always the winning strategy, but it is a way to get leverage. Okay, so now number 2 is Wilson. Now Wilson is a $1,400 drop off from Mahomes. He has a 26.5 game implied total. The matchup with Arizona is one of the best on paper, with the being 31 or 30th, and he's throwing the ball a lot. He's high end pass completions. They're surprisingly well. Last week they did have to throw a lot because they got behind in New Orleans. but he's very efficient, and he's been very efficient in the past. He just hasn't put up as many passes as he has in the last couple of weeks. But Wilson and his price and the implied total and a great matchup, I'm definitely going to have him in consideration. Case Keenum, he's $4,900, $2,600 less than Mahomes. He has a fairly low implied total of 23 points, but the matchups versus the Giants, who are allowing 29.4 points per game, is one of the top matchups this weekend for the quarterback position. Keenum, he's averaging 25.7 points per game. He provides value. He's also going to provide the recency bias. Everybody's seen how he played Monday night. It looked horrific against the Bears, to say the least. So a lot of people will be off of him, and I look for him to be fairly low owned. But their offense is not running through Adrian Peterson. Their offense is going through Case Keenum, the rookie receiver McLaren. They have Richardson, the other slot receiver, who's Mr. Irrelevant Quinn. He's been pretty relevant and getting a lot of targets, and Keenum's throwing the ball around. As I mentioned in the other statistics, they're up there in pass attempts and plays per game. They're not winning, but they're using the passing game to try to stay in the game. And on Monday night, they didn't do too well through the first three quarters. But in garbage time, he put together some scoring and threw a pass to McLaren, and I believe the other one was to Richardson, and he was completing a lot of passes. He was under siege for most of the game by the Bears defense. They put it on him, but he's definitely one to look at. Low price, he would allow you to get up to some higher price players in different positions. So he's going to be in my player pool. And like, he's number 2 in passing attempts, number 4 in passing offense, fantasy points per game, 84.67 fantasy points per game. Next is Jackson from Baltimore. He kind of let me down last week. I liked him a lot, and I thought I would get leverage by taking him over Mahomes on the road. Kansas City's defense is suspect, and I thought that mixing his running ability with his passing ability, there was a chance that he could. And the game had the highest game total, and I thought, well, if everybody's going to take Mahomes, then maybe I can gain some leverage by taking Jackson. It didn't work out for me. He wasn't my highest owned quarterback last week. Actually, Winston was my highest owned, and that did pan out pretty well. But Jackson, like I said, he's got 26.3 implied total this week against the Browns at home, coming off a loss, 287 yards per game, a 63% completion percentage, a number 1 in total offensive plays run. Number two passing fantasy scoring team with 140.45 points per game. That's what the passing offense for Baltimore is generating. Now, the schedule, they have played Miami, Kansas City, obviously tough, but does allow points. And I can't remember right offhand the other game that they played, but Miami was definitely on that schedule, and a lot of teams that have played Miami, Dallas, Baltimore, their New England, their offensive numbers are skewed upwards a little bit because of that. And Jackson's $6,900. Now, this week with Jackson, $6,900. Mahomes is $7,500. I kind of like the matchup better for Mahomes, and I figure if I'm going to get up to 6,900, I'm going to figure out a way to get up to Mahomes this week for this matchup. Next is Deshaun Watson, 25.8 points implied total this week, 65.6 completion percentage, 10.3 average depth of target. He's throwing the ball down the field good distance. And has an 8 yards per completion. So his completions that he's getting are downfield too. He's not just dinking and dunking down the field. He's getting the ball down the field to have that high of an average. They have a lack of running game, and Watson will take off, but he has been airing the ball out, throwing a lot of passes. In the game script this week with Carolina, Christian McCaffrey coming to town. If it's somewhat of a shootout, you can see the situation where Watson's going to put the ball in the air because they're not going to get back in the game with the running game. Their running game is just right now it's just not producing and keeping them in the games. It's Watson's arm, so he's number 5 on this list. Next is Jones, and I talked to him briefly. He's $5,300, and he's probably going to be one of the higher owned spin down quarterbacks based on his performance last week. Barkley went out. He took over the game, brought him back against Tampa Bay, looked really good. I hadn't really followed the guy in college or preseason that much. Sometime in preseason, he had really good statistics in the preseason, but he can get a little careless with the ball. But one thing that I noticed and other people had talked about was the fact that he definitely has a running game. He did it in college, and he showed it last week too. And with Barkley out, and there's two things here. The game script with Washington coming in, Keenum throwing the ball around. Perhaps they put some points on the board. The Giants don't have Barkley. He's out 4 to 8 weeks. So you could see a situation where it's Jones, drop back in the pocket. If you don't have anything, take off. You could see, so you could have his rushing yards mixed with his passing yards. And at $5,300, it wouldn't take many points for him to get value. And a couple scores in there, and he would definitely hit value. So he's one to consider. I'm a little leery because it's only a 1-game sample, but we'll put him in the player pool and use him if I need to use him for leverage. If he's higher owned, though, I'm not going to drop down to use him, and it just makes no sense to gain leverage on a player that everyone else is using. So, and last but not least, Phillip Rivers, facing the number 31 defense, giving up 30.6 points per game. He's number 4 in pass attempts with 116 attempts through 3 games. He has Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is back. He throws the ball to Eckler out of the backfield. Throws the ball around. The game script, I mean, a lot of people are concerned. You hear the same thing every week with Miami. Well, if they're going to get blown out, are they going to take them out of the game? Well, to get to that point, there's only one thing. If Eckler ended up scoring the touchdowns, that would eliminate the potential for Rivers to have a really high scoring game. And touchdowns are really hard to predict, and you don't really want to count on them as part of your scoring. But if Rivers can get to that 30 points game total or more, they're a 17-point favorite with an over-under of 44. So, yeah, they're expecting them to score about 27 points. As long as they're not running them in, and he's been throwing a ton to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is with Hunter Henry being out, is getting a lot of targets. He's obviously Rivers' favorite target. And you also have Mike Williams, who's back and healthy now, who's another big target when they get down in the red zone. So moving forward, when I put my lineups together, I find the ones that stand out statistically. I keep digging through the week. looking for that nugget that somebody else might not have, or that may help me have a better balanced lineup in other places. But for now, the quarterback pool, I'm going to narrow it down to this right now, and expect it to be narrowed down even further on Saturday. And I'll tell you why, or if I add someone, I'll also tell you why. I try to be totally transparent during this. Give you the lineup. As I mentioned in my recap video, the players that I had in my player pool last week, you could have used those to construct a lineup which would outscore the eventual winner of the Millie Maker in Draftkings, using strictly the players I had. So this week, starting out with the quarterback, we're going to have Mahomes, Goff, Wilson, Keenum, Jackson, Watson, Jones, and Rivers. And as I said, I will continue to look for value in other factors to narrow this down even more. And we'll cover this strategy for week 4. I want to thank you for joining me this evening. My next video, we're going to take a look at the running back position for week 4. I'll follow that up with wide receiver position and Thursday night showdown, which should be a good one. Philly at the Packers. Maybe some scoring. I'll give you a couple examples of a Thursday night showdown lineup. But in the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, like, hit that notification bell so you'll get notified when my next video does post. And feel free to drop some comments below. Something better that I can do, something that you like. I mentioned it. This is my 3rd week. I mentioned it the last couple of weeks. Obviously, you can't tell me that you got value this week before Sunday, but hopefully you will. If you follow me, we put these player pools together, and I'll show you. I don't enter. I want to emphasize, I don't MME, mass multi-enter, meaning I don't. The ones that have 150 entries, I don't do that. I can't afford to do that, and I just try to build really strong, sensible lineups. I believe in game script. I believe in the totals from Vegas, and I use a bunch of statistics, and I narrow things down. I have won 2 large GPP tournaments before. One most recently in March. It had 29,000 people in it. I had 1 entry, and that was NBA. And then I won a NFL 4 o'clock only GPP tournament. It had over 20,000 entries. I had 2 $1 entries in it and won that. And I've placed in several. Not enough for it to be my occupation. I just really enjoy doing it, and I hope you get some value out of my research and strategy. So again, I'll see you real soon. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. My name's Ty Patton. Take care, and I'll see you soon.